Hello, all. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for watching this wonderful panel discussion about Black women percussionists. This is part two of our panel discussion. We started one back in November and had a lot of great discussion and kind of just scratched the surface. What we really want to do with this panel that we're doing today is hopefully have this be a resource to others, a type of inspiration that we can have to others that are considering music careers, look at possible different careers maybe they hadn't thought of, and really just give you an example of different models of success that you may have in the music world. One of the first things I would like to do is to let you see these wonderful women that are in our panel. For each panelist, I would love for you to, tell us a little bit about you in about 2 or 3 minutes. Tell us about your recent projects, anything that you may be really proud of to let us know about you. I would love to start with Miss Terri Lyne Carrington.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nice to be here among all of you. As far as recent projects or a little bit about myself, I don't know. I've been playing for, let's see, about 47. Actually, this year would make 50 years. Now that I think about it, so lots of different things have happened in that time span. Playing kind of across the board as far as jazz and jazz related, jazz adjacent music, uh, and have had some nice success with a recent album that I put out called New Standards Volume 1, which is some music from a book that we put out. When I say we, Berklee College of Music and the institute that I founded at Berklee, which is the Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice. And the book is New Standards 101 Lead Sheets by Women Composers. Yeah, and that's kind of been my most recent project surrounding an initiative, hashtag, slogan, all these things related to the idea of jazz without patriarchy. And that's my little microcosm of of the world. So that's the lens that I'm looking through it at. And I guess that's my 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Wait,
Uh,
man, that's my mother.
love it, love it.
Miss and ma'am, those are all my mother.
Yes, all of them. Next panelist, love to hear from you. This is Miss Galen McKinney.
Hello, everybody. I'm certainly really happy to be here. Uh, I It's good to see my sister Terri Lyne. Honestly, she's the reason why I kept playing drums. I've been playing since I was 2 years old, which is about 100 years ago. um, I am the, I have grew up in a musical family. My father was a musician. My mother was a vocalist and musician. I just recently released a project of his music in 2018 called McKinfolk, New Beginning, which featured some really fantastic people on it. Kevin Mahogany made his appearance on there, Marcus Belgrave, Wendell Harrison, Jerry Allen, Regina Carter, and a bunch of other folks came to pay homage to Dad. And I really appreciated that too. And it's a great tribute to his music, which I intend to keep the legacy going. Um, and then in 2020, during the pandemic, I released a project of my music called Zoot Suit Funk, and that started circulating in 2020. And most recently, one of the things growing up, and I've told Terry this before, I felt really by myself as a woman playing drums because I didn't see any other women playing drums when I was coming up until my father came home from a trip in New York and I was 10 years old. and he told me that he saw another little girl playing the drums, and he was all excited. And he told me she's 8 years old, and she was playing with Clark Terry. And I asked him, I said, what's her name, Dad? And he said, Terri Lyne Carrington. And that's all I needed. I was like, yes, there is another girl playing the drums. So I went right upstairs and started practicing. So since then, I uh, I get regularly when I'm playing at I play at the it's called the oldest jazz club in the world. Baker's Keyboard Lounge has been open consecutively since 1934. And so I play there on the weekends, and at least once or twice a weekend I hear, "You're the first woman drummer I've ever seen," or "You're the first woman drummer I've seen outside of Sheila E." And I'm thinking to myself, wow, obviously these people are not on Instagram or social media, because then they would see some more. But that's here in Detroit anyway. So I decided to start a festival last year called Women Who Drum. And it was small but mighty because the idea came to me late. And so I started it with me and Aisha Ellis and Karen Tamales, who are two other drummers who play here in Detroit. And it was very, very successful and well attended. So I'm doing it again this year. And I'm in the fundraising stages of it. I'm planning on doing it in August. And I'm planning on trying to get Shirzette Tenon, and I'm gonna have the Pocket Queen and some others join me, who expressed interest. And I think you expressed the interest too, Akami. So I'm planning on inviting you at some point too. So I wanted to just people to see women doing this thing not only as drummers but band leaders as well, because that's you don't see that a whole lot either. So I wanted to feature them as band leaders and drummers in this festival. And the day before, I was trying to do master classes with some of the artists I'm trying to bring in. So that's what I'm doing. This is my love right now, is trying to get that going. And that's my 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I know, as we talked before, whenever I get my life together and I can do that, I'm definitely coming up there to be on that. That's awesome.
Okay. All right.
From our next panelist, that's Miss Akami Keys.
Hello. Wow, it's an honor to be sitting here and to be chatting with you all. My name is Camelia Kami Keys, but I go by Cami. I have been playing drums since I was about 5. I saw my cousin playing in church, and that kind of sparked my interest from there. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So from there, I, just wanted to learn everything, any programs in school, anything that was available as far as like music education. I was like, sign me up. So from there, I just started, practicing. Eventually, my mom broke down and bought me a drum set after several years of like, Mom, I need a drum set. I need a drum set. And lots of Christmases and tears. Like, I didn't get it this year, but, I was always hopeful. Kept practicing with my sticks on pillows, kitchen tables, everything, just playing on everything. Eventually, my mom broke down and bought me a set when I was about 13. And from there, I was just practicing like crazy. At the time, I think they had this drummerworld.com, and I would go in there and look for drummers, and I would watch drummers and just practice. And I was just so inspired, but I was like, man, I really need to start taking lessons if I'm gonna like be able to really do this professionally. And so by that time I was like in high school, and I auditioned and was accepted into a Center for Fine and Performing Arts high school. And from there, I met my instructor, Miles Overton III, who was actually in the president's own Army band. And so I started taking lessons with him, and he just exposed me to concert percussion. How do you do a thumb roll with the tambourine, like triangle technique, mallet percussion, like everything past the drum set. And so that was like, and it was helpful because I was in symphonic band in high school, and I was doing a lot of that stuff. So after I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to play professionally. And I was like, man, I really want to get paid. Like, how do I get paid to play drums? Like, and so I was like, how do you become a professional? And so like I didn't even really think anything of it, but I was talking to my dad, he was like, join the military, join the military, go to the military, they'll pay for your school, they'll pay you, you can. And so I was like, there has to be like, and then he broke it down. He was like, don't go to the Army, don't go to the Marine Corps, like all the branches I shouldn't go to. He was like Air Force or Navy. And I was like, all right, let me check out Navy. So I typed in like, I Googled like Navy band, Navy music, something like that. And this whole thing popped up, all the requirements for the audition. I'm looking it over and I'm still taking lessons with my instructor, even though I graduated. He's like, oh yeah, you got this. You got this. He was like, we're gonna work on this. And so we worked on the audition requirements material for about a month or two, got my prepared piece for snare, got my prepared piece for mallet percussion, my marimba solo, went in, and prior to going in, I had to talk to a recruiter. And he was like, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to make it because a lot of these people who are in the music program have like master's degrees or at least a bachelor's degree. And you just graduated high school. And so I, go ahead and try it out. And so like I kind of had that in the back of my head when I went into audition, and I played my snare piece first. And I was like, like hopefully I get in, but I'm thinking like, prepare myself for, yeah, thank you, but not today or something like that. And they were just like, hold on, you just said you graduated from high school? And I was like, yeah, like 2 months ago. They were like, we can't tell you this like officially, but you're in. And I was like, what? So like that just set the stage for the whole audition. Like I'm like, it was such a blessing. And so I played my drum set stuff. All they wanted to hear a wide variety of styles, jazz, rock, funk. They brought in actual musicians who were in the Navy, and I got to play with them. And I did several other requirements. The audition was over an hour. After all that, about a week or two later, I got a message that said, you've been accepted, the official letter. From there, I went to boot camp, did that whole thing. And from there, I went to A school, which is in Norfolk. They have a military school for music. And so I was there for 6 months, and it was tough because it was like ear training, like everything theory based I had to learn in about 6 months. And so it was like a hardcore crash course, but I made it through it. Eventually moved to Japan, where I lived there for 3 years. And yeah, met my husband there. He was a saxophone player in the military band. And yeah, eventually got out, started working on my own music. And that was in about I got out of the military in 2014. Finished school, got my degree in digital media, web technology. And from there, had my son. I've been on tours, just working social media. Recently got sponsored by several drum companies. And so it's been a journey. But yeah, long story short, that's kind of my bit. I think that was more than 2 minutes.
No problem, Cami. And one other panelist, Miss Alana Wiesing.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy and honored to be here with you all today. My name is Alana Wiesing. I am an orchestral timpanist and percussionist originally from Phoenix, Arizona. Funnily enough, like everyone else on this panel, my first background in drums was actually playing drum set. Those were the first lessons that I ever took. And my mom found me a recent graduate from Berklee, actually, Terri, for me to study with. And so that left a very excellent early impression in my training, to be studying with another female drummer pretty early on. Eventually found my way over to orchestral percussion, studied with the former principal percussionist of the Phoenix Symphony through middle school and high school. Went on to complete my Bachelor and Master of Music in Percussion Performance degrees from Indiana University in the Jacobs School of Music. Remained in Bloomington for about 3 years after I had graduated, and used that as an active base to freelance and take auditions, and stay very busy in that freelance life until landing my current job, and in my current city. So I currently play as the principal timpanist with the Tucson Symphony Orchestra. So it's very special, and amazing to have ended up back in my home state and just a couple hour drive away from my family and my parents, which is really cool. I also serve as an adjunct professor of percussion at the University of Arizona Fred Fox School of Music. And the project I would say I'm most excited about that I started working on in 2020 is a network called the Network for Diversity in Concert Percussion, where I serve as the president and chair of the board of directors. We serve as a resource and a support system for underrepresented and underserved communities within the concert percussion industry. And so we have two different programs, a youth artist and an emerging artist program. Youth artist being for middle school and high school kids, emerging artists being for collegiate aged kids. And we support them through master classes, professional development sessions where they get to speak with professionals in the industry about musical and other non-musical career entrepreneurial related topics. We have mentorship between our professional members who are sort of our faculty members and our students, but we also have a mentorship program within the cohorts as well. So our emerging artists will help mentor our youth artists. So that creates a really special bond between them, gives them an opportunity to maybe ask some questions and discuss some topics that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable asking a professional about. And then we also offer financial support through our virtual gear garage, so they can come to us and request assistance in terms of the standard gear, mallets, sheet music, books, things like that. But they can also come to us with requests for financial support to help travel to auditions or travel to conferences, lodging expenses on said auditions and trips. And so we're trying to make it as all-encompassing of a program as possible. And that has been a real labor of love through the pandemic and onward. And we currently have applications open, and we're getting ready to go into our third season already this upcoming fall. And so that's been an absolutely incredible project to have helped spearhead and be a part of. And I also actively present master classes and clinics and seminars in both timpani and percussion, as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion work at various educational institutions and performance institutions around the country. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing, and that was my 2 minutes, loose 2 minutes.
Thank you, ladies. You are all doing some incredibly awesome things out here, which is, why I want to kind of throw out, a question to all of you. All of you, and I know I have as well. We talked in November about, obstacles, things that have, gotten in the way of the career path. And excuse me, a lot of young women are not choosing to go into music or not choosing to continue to play drums, even though it may be something they love, because they run into some obstacles. Some of those may have been racially, there may be gender, there may be a lot of different things. So I would love to hear from you, because I'm sure you've all experienced some type of obstacles. What kind of advice would you offer, a young woman that might be considering music, but maybe has some obstacles or some pushback or something? What helped you to continue to push forward to get to where you are? What could you offer someone, just starting to get where you are, essentially?
I'll go first. For me, I started so young that I wasn't really thinking about obstacles. I wasn't thinking about anything other than it was fun. I liked it. I got attention for doing it, so I got feedback that I was doing something good, and that's really important. My parents were very supportive, and my dad knew everybody, so he gave me literally and figuratively access to the jazz stage. So I didn't see any obstacles. I just plowed through. If something, small were to happen, like somebody say something off the cuff, or nothing major happened really, but little things, I would just plow through, and I had so much support that anybody saying anything that felt a little negative, or slanted in that direction, I just knew that there were so many other people that were supportive that I didn't really let it in. So I think I lived with a little bit with my head in the sand for quite a while, because since that was my experience, I didn't quite understand other people not having that experience. And so it wasn't until I really listened more open-heartedly to other people's stories that I started being more concerned about gender equity in the field, because it really was not just a matter of people not wanting to do it or not being good enough, or there was so many systemic issues. And yeah, basically I feel like if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And people that are successful, I think we have a responsibility to open doors for others. So I think you have to find a mentor if you can. Like some people, I think maybe that's difficult because now everybody's online on YouTube, becoming, or Instagram, becoming famous before they've even played a gig, a full gig, which is hilarious to me. But I think you have to have mentors and people to keep you on the right path. I'm not saying that the way people do things now is not valid. I'm just saying it's not sustainable if you don't understand everything as much as possible. So if you don't have a mentor, I think look for one. And I think a lot of people are willing to, people aren't coming to them. And there's a lot of older musicians that mentoring helps them to feel purposeful in their older years. So I think that's something that's really important, in paying attention to the elders and finding the value in people that come before you and what they've contributed. Sometimes with some of the younger people, I feel like they're just living in the moment, and I think that's important. To be a good musician, you have to be able to live in the moment. But at least an improvising musician, I think you really have to, because anything could come at you and you have to respond without thinking about it. But I do feel like sometimes there's a disconnect with the history and all the things that happened so that you could be where you are today. So those would be, just two suggestions, a couple of suggestions from me.
And I'm going to piggyback on that too. Is when I have a couple of young ladies that I do mentor, and they had not heard of it was amazing to me. It's amazing to me, but they're Instagram and they're internet babies. So I told them, you need to check out. I mentioned you, Terri. I mentioned Cindy Blackman, and check out some of these people that came before you who paved the way. Even the lady, can't get her name in my head, from Sweethearts of Rhythm. She was doing it in the 40s, which was really, 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 really unheard of back then. So, there are people who paved the way for you to be doing what you're doing now. Um, I, I I enjoy working with young people as well, because not only do I learn something, I'm able to teach them something, and I learn something too. It's a give and take situation. But what Terri said about having a mentor, that is a very good idea, because if you've never played out of the internet, which some of a lot of you are touring, but some of you are some of you maybe just the internet. If you never played outside of that, you need to know what happens on a gig, and how to function in that situation. So I would agree that getting a mentor, it would be the best way. And some of the young ladies that I'm mentoring now, um, a couple of them are really talented, and I'm going to actually put them in that situation by putting them on the festival, so they can get that aspect of it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to just piggyback on that a little bit and say mentoring is getting a mentor is a very good idea for younger drummers, especially women drummers who are trying to do this. And also, I was also kind of sheltered a little bit because my parents were very, very, very supportive because they were both musicians. So I met all kind of people over my young life. When I was a child, I met all kind of musicians, and none of them discouraged me from playing the instrument as a woman. It wasn't until later when I ran into some interesting moments playing with the group Straight Ahead, which is I mentioned earlier, well, maybe I didn't, all-female jazz group that we might have been one of the first all-female jazz group to get signed to Atlantic Records back in the day. And man, we saw a lot of stuff as women, little disrespect, like, oh, here come these, what they're getting ready to do, and or me going to a jam session and the drummer loosens up the pedal and it comes loose from the drum while I'm playing. Just little tiny little things that let you know that, oh, they're not enjoying the fact that you're a woman playing the drums. And even a dear friend of mine who I play with regularly, he told me flat out, he said, yeah, a lot of these guys around here, they don't want to hire you because they don't want to, you're a girl on the drums, a woman on the drums, and they don't want to hire a woman on the drums. And I said, really? And these were people I were friends with and knew well. And it just really blew my mind that, a lot of the times they didn't want to hire me simply because I was a woman. And he made it very clear that the reason why he hires me is because he said, because you can play. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that he looked past the fact that I was a woman and just looked at my skills and decided that's what he wanted to have in his group. So, nowadays, I don't know how much is that. I guess it's still going on, unfortunately. This is why Terri Lyne has her gender justice going on. She had to create that because it's still happening. So, so I would just say, like she said, get a minute to talk to if you can find especially if you're a woman playing drums, you find someone who's already doing it. It's nice to talk to just get stuff off your chest even and let express how you're feeling. So yeah, that's all I need to say about that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here too. I really love what has already been said about finding a mentor. I think even further than finding a mentor is finding someone who also understands you and sees you for who you are and fully acknowledges you for who you are. So that goes beyond just the sharing of the experiences, the sharing of, the path that you also want to take is similar to that person, but also that sense of acceptance in that space just for being who you are authentically in that space. So even if it isn't a mentor who occupies the same, gender or other parts of your identity, it could be someone that also just understands and accepts those things about you or is willing to understand and grow that level of respect and understanding about that person. Being in the orchestral space, a vast majority of my teachers were white men. And that's just kind of the nature of the way that subset of the industry has been. And so coming up, I never saw myself fully in that space. And to my knowledge, I think I'm the only female African American professional timpanist or percussionist in a United States orchestra, playing presently, which is pretty crazy to think about. It's certainly something that I'm very proud of achieving, but at the same time, it's like, come on, like we've got to do something about this. And that's part of why I helped to create the network that I'm overseeing right now, is to sort of help address those things. So what I do feel mostly lucky for is that most of the teachers that I had, didn't really see me in terms of my gender or other elements of my identity. They saw my potential as a player. I always tried to put my playing at the forefront of everything that I did. While obviously always knowing full well that people are going to have their perceptions or preconceived notions of my ability or anything else about my professionalism or my playing based on parts of my identity. That always has to be in the back of one's mind. But later in my training, I was able to sort of expand my view and have that awareness of that perception. Kind of like what Terri was saying earlier, I started so early, I started taking music lessons when I was 5. I wasn't thinking so much about, the implications of worldview on, discouraging my capacity to grow my interest in wanting to play music professionally. But once I did get to college, I started to realize, oh, there really aren't any other people who look like me who are trying to do what I'm doing. I should be seeking out other people who do. And so I did start studying with other women and other African American male colleagues at the time. And that was incredibly inspiring and empowering for me to do so. And so just to kind of wrap up, I think it is important to seek those who have like experiences, like backgrounds, like identities, in order to feel inspired and feel empowered so that they can see others who are on stages doing what they want to be doing. And that's certainly the role that I hope that I'm playing right now in my career as well.
Before we move on to another question, Cammie, did you have anything you want to add? I didn't want to cut you out.
I I think what everyone mentioned is really cool, and some stuff that was mentioned, I didn't even really think about it. Like I keep hearing this thing about mentor, and when I was taking lessons, I had my teacher, which I still call, and I'll ask him about contracts, and now that I'm getting the opportunity for endorsements and stuff like that, I still go to him and I'm like, hey, like, is this for real? You think I should take this type of step? Kind of like these grown-up big type of moves that are happening now in the music industry. So I definitely, I guess I treat him as a mentor, but I don't know. I do agree, having someone to kind of throw stuff off of and talk about that understands the community and has been in it for a while is really great. Have I had any experiences in the past where I felt like I was a little bit out? Yeah, there's been times when I was in high school and I was the only girl in the drum line, just stuff like that. Like you look around and you're like, wait a minute, it's just me by myself. But the beginning stages, like when I started playing, it was just like most, it's just you just want to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, and you want to be good. And my drum instructor always was just like, your playing is going to speak for you. So my encouragement is if you are into it and you really do want to do it, then you still got to sit down and put in the hours, because you don't want to be that girl drummer that's just feeling like you're getting spots because you're a girl, right? You still want to put in the work. You still got to have the dedication and the persistence and the commitment to the craft, because first things first is the music, and then everything is next to that.
Awesome. So many great answers. We are very blessed now that we have, the social media, and we're able to connect with people more today than say 10, 20, 30, years ago. And most of the people I run into are so excited to see someone else that looks like them. And the isolation a lot of times keeps people from continuing. They just feel like they're by themselves. And you mentioned, making sure you have a mentor, things like that. But what do you think are some other kind of broad scale solutions that could help break the present barriers? You talked about, some of the systemic things. How can we ensure that, the model of success that we want or we maybe envision continues to be diverse, as far as careers, individuality? I mean, what else do you think we can do? We're doing a few things now, but what else do you think we can do to help this?
Well, first I want to say that things are a lot different now. I feel a shift. That's a good one. So like when I started this institute even 5 years ago, I thought, well, this will never happen in my lifetime, meaning actual gender equity. And now I don't feel that way. You know, I feel like it's possible, because I feel like the conversation is now really happening, and it's happening with everybody, even the people that really never thought they would be having it. They're kind of forced to have it. So whether it's institutions that have not traditionally had gender equity or even racial equity in their bands, you know, maybe one person here or there, but you know, for the most part, have remained you know, dominantly white male. And I feel like that group is being forced to reckon with this idea of gender equity and racial equity, as well as you know, all the other things that we have to be concerned about. You know, everybody is forced to really look at the world through a larger lens than the one, you know, that they're comfortable with or have been looking through most of their lives or careers. So I think that's a really positive thing, and it's making me feel very hopeful and optimistic. So I think at this stage, there's not maybe as much isolation, especially because of the internet. The world is smaller, it gets smaller every day. And I don't think there's as much isolation because I think you can find your tribe, you can find people that that do understand you and want you to be your authentic self. Sometimes it's not exactly where you would like it to be. It may be not in your hometown, or, you know, maybe not at the school or institution you're connected to. But that just means there's opportunity there, wherever you are, to be the person that's bringing that conversation there. You know, I was talking to some students from a well-known music school, I won't say the name, and they were saying how awful it is. And it's a very well-known, respected music school, and how, you know, they treat women. And I said, well, why did you stay? Why are you there? And they felt like, they said, because if they had left, who would be there, you know, to champion this cause? And I really respected them for kind of just putting up with all of it, to try to make change. And this school has now hired their first woman faculty member, and they're looking for another one. There was something else I was going to say. You were talking about isolation, and what can we do? I think it's like the whole ecosystem has to change and be a part of this change. It's not, you know, I mean, as much as it's great that we're sitting here talking to each other, we all understand the problem. It's more impactful to me if we're talking to people that don't identify the same way, you know, that we do. And that's, you know, obviously, hopefully those are the people that may see this. But I think these conversations, you know, we have to work hard at making sure other people take responsibility in making change, because they benefit from it. So why should we do all the work? You know, the music itself, the field itself, the business, it all benefits from gender equity. It all does. And as far as jazz is concerned, I tell musicians all the time that I know you love this music and this art form, because you wouldn't do it if you didn't, because you're not doing it for the money. It's the road less traveled, for sure. And if you truly care about the art form, then you must care about gender equity, because the art form will not reach its full potential until that happens. And we've, you know, studies have proven this. Everybody knows that diversity in general is more profitable for everybody. It's just it adds to the success of any institution or entity. So when you can have these conversations and get people to take ownership, you know, in making change, I think that's super important. Yeah.
I think I'd like to add to that and say that I've always felt that the most impactful, meaningful change that could take place is to inspire and empower students of younger ages to get involved earlier and to also remain involved over time. I recently took an audition where I was one of two African American people in the room, and I was the only woman in the room just from the start of the audition. And that to me is highly problematic, because that means to me that, you know, not only are the odds of winning an orchestra job already pretty low to begin with, but if there aren't even people who are being invited or who are getting into the rooms where those opportunities are held and where lives can change with these kinds of jobs, then that to me is a huge problem, that there's a disconnect somewhere in translation. And so for me, I think getting students involved at much younger ages, giving them the inspiration and the resources to see that this is a viable, enjoyable, vibrant career path for them, that this is something that people who look like them and have had their experiences are doing presently. That is one of the upsides, I think, of the internet and, you know, social media, things of that nature, is that it is easier than ever to have access to those who are doing these kinds of things and engaging in these kinds of projects in whatever capacity, to share their love of what they do and other people to see it and be inspired by it, and to kind of have that wind at their backs to provide them with the proper resources, the proper training, to be able to put themselves in positions to, you know, audition for college programs, audition for graduate programs, start auditioning for other professional ensembles. That level of support has to be present at every single step of the way. And I think because it isn't present as early in that process, by the time it gets to the point where we do see more visibly that level of representation and impact at the professional level, it's already kind of lost. And so I think trying to provide greater resources and support earlier on, I think, is a fantastic place to start, because then I think it becomes easier, not easy, but easier as time goes on to continue that momentum, so that people who are from these underrepresented and underserved groups and communities can continue to stay inspired, can continue to see, as they're advancing in their careers and in their paths and growth as a musician, other people who look like them and other people who have similar goals and experiences as them, and they can be inspiring and motivating each other. And I think we do see that in the current culture. It becomes very easy with anyone who occupies the majority of his space to feel seen and heard in that space. And it feels really easy to become and stay motivated in that space if they always see themselves in it. And so I think it's important to continue to improve and perpetuate a culture where everyone can be inspired and sustain their love for music along the way.
I agree. I think everything that was mentioned and said as far as ideas to make it more inclusive for females, Black females, like I think that's really cool. And early on, like was mentioned, is because like it, to be proficient at an instrument in particular, like it takes so much time and so much work. So it has to, that exposure almost has to happen really early. And I think the earlier the better. And so yeah, with like was mentioned as well, like with online, and you know, you can get inspiration from seeing someone play online. You sometimes it's in person, but a lot of times it's online. And so even today when I look for videos, instructional videos on you know, technique or just to see what's out there, the majority of the people that are even instructing are guys. So it's just in my head, I need to put my stuff out there. So I need to just at least represent and share what I have to say, even if it's the same thing. If I'm saying the same thing in a different way, it's coming from a different person. It may help relate to someone, or So yeah, I think everything that was. I think these are great ideas, honestly.
Most definitely. Terri, can you speak to really quickly, what do you think it would look like in 2023 to feel or be welcomed in the percussion or drum world as a Black woman? What would that look like? What should that look like now?
To be
What
welcomed.
yeah, what you want?
What would it look like? I mean, I think everything we've been saying, just so many of the spaces where we don't see ourselves, we would start to see more of ourselves. So yes, in orchestras and also teaching. We're doing a study in collaboration with Laura Pellegrinelli that is looking at gender equity in the field of teaching, as far as like administration, but also this faculty adjunct, all of that, the different tiers, because sometimes people will report that they have women, but they're all adjuncts. So we're looking at how many are full-time, and so to start having equity across, the different levels in education would be great. Of course, on stage, too, performing. We started a Next Jazz Legacy Emerging Artist Program, where we grant band leaders to hire women, and we pair women with women and non-binary performers with creative mentors, but also band leaders, so they have an on-stage apprenticeship. And that's really, really important, because sometimes there's a lot of there's mentorship programs that you can take lessons, you can talk, you can get some information, but you're not getting the on-stage experience. And so I think that's really important. I was given opportunity before I was ready, often, because somebody saw potential. So we have to train each other to see potential. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. But basically to keep making space and to keep making people understand why they need to keep making space. And I think we just keep plugging away at it.
Alana, I have a question for you. You talked a lot about um, the orchestral space, and I know that I've had incredibly great and talented students who have, wanted to venture in that route. They've studied with um, famous teachers that are in other symphony orchestras and things like that. And a lot of what has slowed them down is some of the treatment that they experience, being the only one. And I don't know if maybe like microaggressions, things like that, maybe people don't even realize. And then some things are direct. As far as that orchestral side of things, do you have anything to speak towards as far as how to survive in that arena when you're looking around and there is no one else that looks like you, and you are experiencing some aggression towards you? How do you survive in that space to keep going?
Yeah, well, over the years, I've really had to develop some pretty thick skin to sort of cope with, process, overcome, and eventually at a place where I ignore and disregard that kind of treatment and those kinds of comments. When I was younger, and even into my collegiate years, a decent amount, I would let those kinds of things really get to me. And those kinds of comments I would take very personally. Um, and then I started to realize, as I matured, as I became more self-actualized and self-realized, that very little of the time was it really about me personally, and was more about that individual person's own ego or own insecurities or own biases, own experiences with others who, occupy one or more of my identities, that usually it has very little to do with me explicitly. And that was a process that I had to work through over several years to get to that point. Um, and when I would work in various spaces, especially while I was freelancing, I was either the only woman in the section, or the only person of color in the section, or both. And so a lot of it came down to always trying to put my playing at the forefront. Um, and I view it as a little bit of a mistake now, but I used to kind of downplay my identity a little bit in those situations and try to say, oh, this isn't happening because of, the fact that I'm a woman or the fact that I'm Black or anything like that. Like, maybe there's something else. And the reality was, I would say a vast majority of the time, if I was on the receiving end of sort of microaggressive comments or other things of that nature, it usually did have to deal with that. And so I got to a place where I started to sort of divorce myself from the comments and not take it as personally, and found a way to effectively traverse in those situations where, I don't tolerate those kinds of comments and that kind of treatment anymore, and realize that it isn't about me usually. Um, and I've always been the type of person that if it is a different issue, I do resolve it and discuss it as amicably as possible, and accept any accountability as necessary. Um, but that's honestly part of the reason, in some ways, why I find playing timpani so appealing, because you're kind of on your own little island in the orchestra. You're a section of one, essentially. So I get to hold myself accountable first and foremost. And, any lines of communication that I have are directly with whoever is on the podium. Whereas if you're playing in a section of people, then there can be a lot of ego, a lot of opinions involved when, you're answering to a principal. Especially as a freelance player, when you're an extra player, you want to do your best to fit in, to do what the principal is asking you to do, to respectfully and correctly accept and adhere to any instruction that they may give you. And I always tried to do my very best with that. But you do kind of fall susceptible to that kind of thing when you're playing in a section of people. And so it is really interesting to deal with different dynamics, because it does open yourself up to those sort of interpersonal relations with people. And so I also just like playing timpani more, so it happened to work out in that way. But there is a little bit more involved to it when you're dealing with a section full of people. That comes with the personality, their own background, their own experiences, their own potential biases, that you have to navigate and sort of weave through. And so the best advice that I have is to realize that a vast majority of the time when those kinds of comments happen, that they very rarely are personal, and try to always keep things as music driven as possible, because that's ultimately the reason why anyone is sharing that space, is to come together to create music together, and collaborate on that kind of project together. And so if more of the emphasis is placed on that shared interest and that shared common goal, I think the result ends up being much better, and much more powerful and impactful in that way. But it was a journey for me to get there. I have some very tough skin and thick skin as a result.
And Cami, I have a question for you as well. I think it's really great that you talked about how you were given the advice of, going into the military. And that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about. When they think about music careers, it's either you need to go teach, get a teaching degree, or if you want to perform, go perform or maybe study with someone. But not many people are out here talking about, going into the military. I would love to hear, and I think our listeners would like to know, what was that experience like? What should, if there was a young woman who wanted or thought about the military, what did they need to be prepared for that? What would they expect in that space, to help them be successful?
Um, wow. Yeah, it was so being in the military, even thinking about prior to going into the military, would what it would actually be like, right? Because you think military, you think, man, I got to go to boot camp, right? Boot camp is like that big scary thing that no one really wants to go to. But once I got past that idea of, I had to talk myself up, like, you know what, I can do this, I can make it through it. I want to play an instrument, and researching was a big part of my decision to go with the Navy, because like different branches, you're sometimes a soldier first before you're a musician. So my choice was to make sure the music was first, even though I was in the military. And with the Navy, they were like, you're a musician first. And so like even when I was in boot camp and I had to fire, I had to do marksmanship, right, with like a pistol and a huge shotgun. Like I totally like I tried it, I failed. They were just like, they looked at they're like, oh, you're in you. They're like, don't even worry about it. Like you're gonna be a musician. And I was just like, ah. So it's just like it's kind of cool. And even while I was in the military, you're treated like you're in a special field, because you kind of are. Like you go to boot camp, you do that whole thing, but your job is to be a musician. So I would say, like, if you're any person that's interested in going that route, I definitely suggest it. You learn a lot really quickly. You're put in a position where I was one of two drummers, and when I was in Japan, so they basically split the band up, and half the band's going to go to the Philippines, half the band's going to go to Hong Kong. And so they might send a rock band out and a big band / like ceremonial band to do marching stuff. So being the only one, like it's like, okay, I gotta just learn this music. Like it was kind of intimidating when I first got there, and I was like, they're like, you're gonna be in the big band, and I was like I've listened to big band music, but I'm not really a big band player. And they were like, well, you're the drummer, like you, so you got to figure it out. And so it was kind of cool, that challenge of like kind of being thrown in there, but being able to quickly adjust, learn the music, whatever you got to do. So that was kind of my experience, because I was so young, and like mentioned, like most of the people coming in had bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. So like I was a recent graduate from high school, going into this field where a lot of my peers were already very well versed in not just their instrument but theory and that whole aspect. They had did the whole gig side of it, where they knew that they didn't want to be a musician where they had to play bars, and they had to, so they came into the military. It was like kind of like a way to, everything is planned out for you. You show up to work, they say, hey, you got this rehearsal. After you're done, you get to go home. Like, or, so it's like your schedule is planned, your gigs are planned. You don't have to do any of that stuff. So it was kind of cool to listen to them and their experiences and how much they appreciated being in the military and the service. But yeah, even when I was one of 3 girls in the band in Japan, and I was one of 2 female drummers in the entire Navy. In the entire Navy while I was in. So like it was really crazy, to think about that. And you just, I mean, like was mentioned, you just gotta you gotta love it that much that you gotta look past it, And so I never felt like I was like mistreated or anything like that. So that was never an issue. There were times, like it's kind of a slippery slope, because like when you're surrounded by guys, you want them to still be able to do their guy stuff, but then they also need to be respectful that there is a girl in the space as well. So it's like a slippery slope. Like, oh, we can't say this because you're in the room, you need to leave. Like, like what? So like maybe you shouldn't be saying it at all, or like, so like kind of just singling you out, like yeah, you're, so it has nothing to do with the music, but it's just like, because you are who you are, you're a girl, maybe you should leave. Oh, like we've had issues in the past, like you're not comfortable with this, like just go out, and so it singles you out, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit weird, but you get past it, you move forward. Is it something that should happen? I don't think so. I think people should just, be respectful, and, if that was probably something that didn't even need to be said, like so it can be kind of a weird dynamic. And I think it's not just in the military, it's also, like we're talking about in every single situation and scenario. But when you do bring in the military aspect of it, there are lots more rules and sometimes restrictions and things that need to be done musically and just within the community. But overall, I had a great experience. It definitely helped me learn a lot really quickly, and it was kind of meeting the goals of what I was looking for. I wanted to play professionally. I wanted to make money. I wanted to get paid. I wanted to travel. So every single one of those boxes that I was looking to fill was able to be filled with serving in the military.
Awesome. I think today, everyone has gotten an opportunity to see some different sides and career paths that maybe they have not thought about. 'Cause I know generally most people, when they think about music, is either teach or play, but there's so many other aspects out here. And I think the industry is growing and all the things that we can do. Kind of as we wrap up this, part of the conversation, I'm just curious to know, I mean, definitely any last things you might want to add, but you are already an inspiration for everybody who's going to watch this to see what you're doing, all the different contacts and resources and things that people had no idea was out there. So I applaud all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. But also, and your last comments, are there any suggestions for maybe people who are your role models or people that you look to or people that people should just look up and say, hey, if you need some inspiration, here's who I look at or here's who I read about. If you could offer that in your last comments, I think that would really help everyone today as well.
I would say that it's been important for me to hone in and stick to a sort of personal mission statement for myself, not just artistically, but also personally, because I've allowed that mission statement to guide any decision that I make, not just musically, but in life. And so for musically specifically, I have a very specific list of goals and things that I know that I'm interested in and know that I want to achieve. And so any organization, any project, anything that I'm involved with has to meet or exceed those goals and expectations for me in order to be involved in it. I don't allow the things that I engage in my life to dictate that for me. And I think that that's sort of a pitfall that a lot of people fall in, is they allow themselves to derive their identity from their place of work or from, other projects they're involved in, instead of actually coming at it from the perspective of, I'm engaging with this workplace because it fulfills this part of my artistic goals and needs, either as a performer, an educator, etc. And so that's, I think, the biggest piece of advice that I could give is to come up with the things that really drive you and inspire you and the goals that you really want to achieve, and allow those things to determine the steps that you take to achieve them. And I think it makes it so much clearer. And just to go back to the earlier conversation about mentorship, I think that that's huge, is being able to seek out someone or multiple people who are actively doing the things that you want to be doing, who share your identities and your experiences. And my experience in doing that, and I'll still reach out to people now, because I strongly believe that we're forever students in this industry. That it's really important to do so, and that all of my experiences have been pretty pleasant when I've done so, that even if it's a cold call situation, someone that you don't know personally, if you were to send them a message on Instagram or send them an email, I've mostly been met with nothing but warmth and eagerness and excitement to connect and share ideas. And I find that to be really important and inspiring as well. So even if that's something that you may be scared to do, I would encourage you to do so, because anytime I get those kinds of messages, I'm more than happy to, share the time that I do have and help share my experiences with other people to help them get to where they want to go. And I'm honored and humbled that they reach out to me to do so. And I would do so for others as well. And so those would be my biggest pieces of advice, is kind of to conceive a personal mission statement for oneself, and to seek out the support and the mentorship from those who look like you, who have similar backgrounds and experiences to you, who are doing what you currently want to be doing.
Is it my turn? I definitely agree. I think you had awesome points as far as the mentorship and your personal statement. Like, the thing that is going to keep you motivated, that you go back to, and you're like, you know what, this is why I'm doing it. Or I think that's great. And not even kind of knowing, that's kind of what I've done, especially over the last 3-4 years. Like when I decided to get really serious post-military, and how am I going to do this music thing kind of by myself? It was, I came up with this little saying, is like, I create the stage I want to perform on. So as far as your audience, as far as the people you want to work with, like you have to be careful, because there's a lot of people that are they're trying to appeal to a certain audience, and in that space, they're entering into places they don't necessarily want to be. And then you start receiving comments and things and whatever, and you're like, hold on, why are people saying this? It could be because you created this space where you started to try to like appeal to a certain audience. So it's kind of staying true to yourself. Staying true to yourself, create the stage you want to perform on. And so that was kind of my thinking when I was kind of getting serious with Instagram and YouTube. I was like, what is the foundation of my idea or my music? And especially after I started writing during the quarantine, it was like, what do I want to share with people? What do I have to say? Like, I play drums, and now that I'm writing lyrics, what do I want to share? And so my message was love and peace and joy, and something that can be translated to anyone, a very positive outlook, vibration. So yeah, I think it's a really great idea to stay encouraged. Like, if you want to do music, obviously it's going to take a lot of practice. So you got to build yourself up. Whether it's with self-affirmations, looking at yourself every day and be like, I'm great. So you walk out into the world, you can carry that with you. So when you get those negative, why are you here though? Like, what are you even doing? Like, you could be like, I already have my moment. I have my talk with myself. I can still carry on. And make it through. Sorry. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. That's kind of been helping me, move forward. And even with my son, after I had my son, I was like, I was invited to go on tour. And I'm like, how am I going to do this tour? And I have a 2-month-old, and it was just like, I just kept believing that it was going to be possible, like, through prayer, asking God, believing, and it worked out. Things just fell into place, and I was able to do this tour, and it was like a really, really great experience for me. So I learned so much as far as like musically, and also, mentally, socially. It was really great. So it's like, it might be tough. I know there's people that live all over the world, and sometimes people even reach out to me and are like, how do I do this in my country? Sometimes women are not allowed to play. Like, I'm not allowed to play, but I really want to do this thing. Uh, my advice would be to, keep a journal, stay encouraged, whether it's writing, picking up, whether it's with your hands, tapping on stuff, all that stuff works. It will help in your progress. And yeah, just stay encouraged.
Well, ladies, I just want to thank you so much for your comments, your messages, just continuing to be a great inspiration. You have been, you are now, and you will continue to be. And I look forward to, and hopefully everyone who gets to watch this will look at your content information to see, where you are. And hopefully that will be an inspiration as we go forward. Thank you so much for giving us rather your time today to speak.